Before we dive into today's episode, we'd like to take a moment to thank our amazing sponsors who make this podcast possible. First up, we have 3D Learning Experts. If you or someone you love struggles with dyslexia, dyscalculia, or similar learning differences, 3D Learning Experts is here to help. They specialize in virtual tutoring for students of all ages, from first grade to adulthood. Their expert tutors use the proven Orton-Gillingham method for language arts, structured and sequential program for writing success, and a multisensory approach to math. This ensures students enhance their reading, writing, spelling, and math skills in a way that suits their needs. Empowering students with confidence and success. That's what 3D Learning Experts is all about. To learn more, visit 3dlearningexperts.com. And when it's time to unwind, why not escape to fabulous Las Vegas with Casa Arce Vacations? Whether you're planning a quick getaway or a family reunion, Casa Arce Vacations offers 4 unique stays at one convenient location. Just under 3 miles from the Strip, choose from a cozy tiny house, 2 stylish studios, or a spacious 4-bedroom, 2-bath unit. All guests have access to amazing amenities, including a play pool, putting green, barbecue, fire pit, and each unit has its own private patio. Perfect for any occasion, they've got the ideal spot for your next adventure. Start planning your trip today at facebook.com/CasaRSA Vacations. Thank you to our sponsors for their support and for the incredible services they provide. Now, let's get back to today's episode.
What kind of tools do you recommend for individuals with dyslexia, dysgraphia, and/or dyscalculia? Can you?
Oh, that's such a wide category.
Okay, let's start with dyslexia.
I can share something that we use in our district. Because again, this is where we kind of do things a little differently, but we have different leadership and different funding, et cetera. All my students on their Chromebook have an extension called Snap and Read. And it is an extension that will read anything on the Google Chrome browser in the Google Chrome environment. So if they're accessing all their instruction on the Chromebook, it will read everything for them. Mm-hmm. So if they have dyslexia and have reading challenges and so forth, they can just close their eyes and let the computer read for them. And including if they have even math work, because a lot of math now is word problem based with Common Core curriculum. So they get their textbook and it's just full of word problems. Well, now they can have the computer read for them. And as I train my teachers on this, I tell them it's like, you're assessing, can they do the math? You're not assessing, can they read the math? Mm-hmm. And it kind of, you see that sort of light bulb kind of go off like, oh, they may not be able to, again, access the curriculum, the math, because they can't read it. It doesn't mean they don't know how to do the math. So removing that barrier. And so that's one of the tools that I've used for my students. And of course, we also include, speech to text, or as Google calls it, voice typing. And I tend to use that now because people get speech to text and text to speech backwards and mixed up all the time. They say one, I mean the other. So I'm using the term voice typing. And they can use that with the various different tools as well, so that they can get their thoughts on the page and demonstrate that they do understand the curriculum and can tell us what they know.
Now, I have a child who had profound dysgraphia, and he hated the voice to text. Now, this was, several years ago, and it has improved, but like I was doing a voice to text message to tell my assistant to tell you guys I was running late, and it, instead of saying Angie, it said and she. So like that kind of stuff would frustrate my child. And so they never liked using the voice to text. Like, how do you work with that kind of situation?
So look, here's the thing about kids. They love to push boundaries, right? I had a student who wouldn't use it on a computer, but would do it on their phone. Okay, so then you get more flexible. One of the things that's really great, and this is kind of what Eric was saying in regards to one of the silver linings of COVID, of the school shutdowns, was that the Google tools and actually many of the universal design tools that are out there now are so amazing and so helpful for our students. So you can click on a word, if you right click on a word and then it tells you what the word means, and then you can click speak and it'll read it to you. You can use Chromevox just to read anything that's on your Chromebook. iPads, iDevices do the same thing. You've got voice typing in Google Docs. On iDevices, you can voice type in any of the programs, right? So there's all these really wonderful things. You can't force a kid to do it. You can say, wow, you just spent 45 minutes trying to write this one sentence. How long does it take you when you voice type it? Well, wouldn't you rather be go outside playing ball or playing video games or whatever the kid likes to do? Like, wouldn't you rather be doing that? Like, why are you wasting your time? Right? And sometimes it's about, I want to be just like everybody else. Right? I don't want to be different. I get that a lot in middle school. I don't know if you do, Eric, but middle schoolers
Very
don't
much
like
so.
middle school through 10th grade. They don't like to be different at all. Which was one of the great benefits of one-to-one technology for my students. Our entire district is Chrome-based, and I believe Eric's is as well. But if you can just nudge them along the way and just keep reminding them and model yourself, it's really helpful. There are other applications that are voice typing. Dragon is one of them. But oftentimes those programs require a very long time for programming, right? You have to teach it your voice to understand. So if you have an accent, it has to learn to understand your accent. And also with voice typing, if you have a very high-pitched voice, it's not particularly accurate. So, you have to like play with it a little bit. And that's where the AT specialist comes in, because we can figure those things out for students. But for kids with dyslexia, not only are there those speaking tools, but there's also, we've got most textbook companies now, their textbooks are online and they have the read aloud option. It's universal design. It's to be ADA compliant, right?
Yeah.
So it's fantastic. Teacher assigns it to them, they pull it up, and it just reads to them. Okay.
And when they go to the university and community college level as well, most professors now are going to online textbooks and getting away from, buying a stack of books like we did when we went to college,
right.
For $550 or $1,000 or whatever it was.
Per book, right?
Per book. I know, it was great. And my accounting book, I remember that was $250 in the late 80s.
Yeah.
So, students just have to remember, and people just be a little patient. Technology is not going to be 100% accurate 100% of the time. It's just a tool, and sometimes we just have to have that patience because I know when I get my phone here and I'm, typing out a text message or voicing a text message, I'm like, that's not what I said. And I have to just go back and edit it. So learning some of those editing skills, and then also, letting it read it back to them so they can hear it back.
Right.
And some of these tools will do that. So after they voice type it, it will read it back to them. And that, actually that happens in my car. When you do the voice texting in my car, it reads the message back to me. And I'm like, no. And I have to hit delete and start it over again because I may be nasally, like with cold, like I have now, and it can't understand me. But you just got to be patient with that. But more and more stuff is advancing and getting a little more accurate.
One of the couple things I want to add to that is one of the features on iDevices, I don't know about Android devices, is first off, there's the word prediction at the bottom. I'm a big believer in word prediction. It saves time. And there are word prediction. Well,
Androids have them
word
as
prediction
well.
program out there that'll read the words to you, right? But there's the slide. So you slide your finger to what you want to write. So like I want to write apple, I go APLE, it pulls up apple, right? So I don't have to spell it exactly correctly. It doesn't always, it's not 100%, but it's pretty good. And if it's not right, you just go back. And the other thing I want to mention in regards to dyslexia is, again, going back to these free programs that the Department of Education has funded, we have bookshare.org, which is an amazing resource. I want to say they have close to 1 million resources now.
Wow.
And it's for any person who has a reading access barrier. It used to only be for people with they used to be a little bit more strict about it, but now they're a little bit more open to understanding what a reading access barrier really could look like. So it can be used for students who are dyslexics, for kids who have physical impairments, and can't turn pages, right? So it's really great. The other thing that it can do is you download your novel. Okay, let's say everybody's reading I don't know what's a book that elementary
Holes in elementary.
Holes. There we go. Holes. They're all reading Holes. I was
Yeah.
about to go with Island of the Blue Dolphins, but I think that's just California. So they pull up Holes. You can change it so that it's you can change the background. So it can be high contrast or it can be a sand background. You can change the font size. You can change the font type, because Dyslexia is the font that's been created for peoples with dyslexia, right? It's a bottom heavy font. You can change the speed, right? So if I have a slower auditory processing, I can reduce the speed by
Wow.
50%, right? You can change the voice. They're not great, but it's not Microsoft Mic. I don't know if anybody remembers Microsoft Mic from the 90s, Microsoft Mic, right? So it's not like that. It is a little bit more digital, right?
Yeah.
But it's a really great resource, and it's a free, wonderful, wonderful resource. And I'm so grateful that the Department of Education keeps upping their grant. It's just so wonderful.
So how can anyone just access it? How do they need to have an IEP or?
So there's two ways. One is that you can get an individual membership, or you can get a school district membership, like a school membership. If I, as a school, go in and I input a student, which I do regularly, right? Then they can automatically get the individual membership. If they want an individual membership, they have to get like a doctor's letter or something to indicate what their disability is, and then they upload that information and they can get their account that way. So
So
there's
do
like
you,
two ways to do it. You
can
do it
I
the
do-
individual.
Yeah.
You do
Go
the
ahead.
individual one.
I just certainly just do the individual one.
Yeah, I try to get my families to do the individual one. I always send them the information, but they don't always follow through. So I just,
Yeah. It generates a form for me to sign, and then I submit some documentation and I fax it off, because they still do fax off to them, and they get the account. That way the parents can manage it,
right,
and as opposed to me trying to manage all the different students that I have with those accounts.
and so what I do is I do the group membership, and then I send the parents the form to fill out for the individual membership. And all they have to do is like sign it and send it off.
And is that available for college level as well in
Yep.
California?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And about the voices, Jackie was talking about that earlier with the digital voices, the computer voices that, we hear like on war games, if we all remember that movie from the 80s.
Microsoft Mic.
Yeah, it is changing. So I was just at this conference, Closing the Gap, in Minneapolis, and one of the programs we use, they showed me, it's like, I know you have the digital voices, but by next year, it's going to be all AI voices.
Yeah.
So it'll sound like real humans. And they played a demonstration, some text that they had it read aloud. And I'm like, oh, wow, that'd be so much better.
I have just recently become enamored with, it's actually more instructional technology, but it's called Read Along by Google. And it is AI powered, and they have all these little stories, and they're leveled 1 through 6. Okay. And they're based off of, it's not grade level. You can do it by grade level, but they're based off of Lexile levels.
Lexile, yeah.
Yeah. And sorry, it took me a
Kind
second.
of like iReady. I think iReady is all Lexile.
Yeah. So they go over the Lexile levels, which I actually prefer because it's such a larger range. And you, as a teacher, or as a teacher, you can actually create a classroom. But let's just say as an individual, I want to do this. I go and I log in with my Google account. There's no age limitation on this particular one. I allow it to access my microphone, and then I read to it. And then if I can't read the word, it tells me how to read the word. It says the word. And then if you don't say it correctly, it breaks down the syllables for you.
Oh, wow.
It's like just reading practice, free reading practice. And the stories are pretty cute. I mean, they're definitely geared for younger kids. But if you've got a child who's struggling with reading aloud, this is really good practice that they don't have to do in front of anybody, because that embarrassment factor can be there. One of the things I wanted just to mention was that it's really important for our students with specific learning disabilities, and actually for kids with all disabilities, right, to understand not only what they can't do, but really understand what they can do, and to build on strengths.
Yeah.
That social emotional component is really important. I used to work at a school that was 100% SLD, and we spent a full period. I worked in the high school. Every day there was a full period dedicated to the social emotional aspects of learning how to be an adult, to be a successful student, as a
Wow.
person with a learning disability. And I want to emphasize that, because even though that's not AT, it all comes together, because if they don't feel good about themselves, they're not going to use their AT.
Confidence is one of the big things we focus on helping our students build, because I've seen students come in for math tutoring and they didn't think they could do anything. And within a month, we build their confidence up and they don't need our help with math anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
I've got a couple of students where that was going on, where they were in 6th grade. When I assessed them, they could read on their own at about a kindergarten level. But then when I had the device read to them, they're reading now at a 4th grade level and can answer comprehension questions. Like, they knew what was going on.
Mhm.
Their listening comprehension was phenomenal. And now that they have this tool, they're like, oh, I can participate in all my classes now. And I can actually produce work.
and I can be in gen ed classes and produce work.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, they were not yet going to gen ed, but they were, but they were now, you can see that confidence, and they were very confident in using the device. They didn't care what anyone around them thought. And what happened was that then the other students were like, well, I want to be able to use that. And they thought it was kind of cool and wanted to use the technology too. And they were able to use it. And they then got to show other students how to use it.
It's so nice when our students can be the teachers. We have students who teach their teachers how to use the tools.
Yes.
Right? Like they're like, oh, I'm in a new classroom. I now have to teach my teacher how to use this particular program.
Right.
A PDF reader or whatever the case may be. It's pretty fun when that happens. It makes me smile.
Yes.
And the other thing is that when they use their tools and they become confident in their tools, I have had students who've not only gone to university, but they've graduated and they've gone on and gotten master's degrees, or they've become, they've passed their real estate license, which is a very hard exam. And they go on to these really beautiful, wonderful careers. But if they don't have that, they're not going to know that they're completely capable of it.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, a lot of times parents will say their teacher says they have comprehension issues. And I often tell the parents, it's not necessarily that their child can't comprehend, it's that they can't read what they're supposed to be comprehending.
Right.
Right.
And so, like you said, Eric, I've never heard the term before, but it's the auditory comprehension is different than the ability to comprehend what you can't read.
And
Correct.
that's what we say to teachers is, are you looking at what they can decode
Mm-hmm.
or are you looking at what they can comprehend? Right. And so it's, in elementary, it's a little bit more difficult because the teachers really are looking at the decoding.
Mm-hmm.
But once you hit 6th grade and that secondary, through high school, that secondary, that's not what the teachers care about. They care about the
Nope.
comprehension.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
It's all content.
Content.
Secondary is all content.
All content.
Right.
Yeah. And that's why I used the example earlier of math with Common Core curriculum. It's all word problems. So are they assessing, can you read the math, or do you understand the math problem and can perform it?
Well,
Yeah.
and it's the same thing with social studies. Is it that you want them to be able to read a name, or do you want them to know who that name is, like who it relates to?
Yeah, like I could never remember dates, and I don't know if they require that as much nowadays, but when I was in school, you needed to memorize all the darn dates.
Right.
And it was so hard for me, but I knew all the information. I just didn't know when it happened.
So that's changed it in itself. It's not so much nowadays about names and dates. It's more of, why did this event happen in history? How did it happen?
Right.
And to be able to have those discussions.
And also to discuss cultural differences.
Yes.
Right. We have, that's important as well. And so teachers have those. Well, maybe this was, why do you think that's not okay? Well, imagine yourself living in the 1700s in that country. How would that be different? Right. So you can have these larger discussions, but you can only have that if the students are comprehending the material.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so I referred to it more as social studies versus history.
Right.
I mean, growing up, it was always, history 9, history 10. And now we refer to it more often as social studies, because it is that study of the social, the social nature of the people and civilization that you're studying at the time.
So we have to work with the gen ed teachers too, and and our special education teachers as well, to get everybody to frame their mind that it's not cheating, it's
Mhm.
equity, right? It's all about equity. And so usually when we have those conversations, it goes really well. Like it's very rare for a teacher to be like, no, I still don't agree with that, right? They understand that it's
There
equity,
are some students I've had who feel like they're cheating when they do it.
right?
Mhm.
But that's
And
different.
it's a little different, but I'm also wondering, where do they get it from? Is someone making them feel that they're cheating or that it's unfair? And it's not an unfair advantage. Like Jackie said, it's about equity.
When I was a parent and strictly a parent with kids with learning challenges, I felt that, my daughter having fewer math problems on the page or fewer spelling words was cheating or making, giving her an easy way out. But when I became a tutor, a specialist, I realized it's absolutely not cheating. Like, you're leveling the playing field for that individual.
I always tell parents that our students are working 700%, 1,000% harder than their peers,
Mm-hmm.
right? They're working so much harder than their peers. So we have to make the workload equitable for them so that they have time to be kids.
Mm-hmm.
There's this big misunderstanding that we need to just focus on our work and not let them play. Our kids need to play. They
Right.
need to get their energy out. They need to be able to sleep well at night, and they need play to grow,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's so important for them. And I think that's my background in human development. I really am a big believer in play. And
Mm-hmm.
so when we can give them equitable amounts of work,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that they can show that they know the information in 5 problems versus 15 or 20, that's what they need to do.
Right. Well, and it breaks my heart how play has been taken out of the educational system. My older two kids, they had kitchens in kindergarten. And by the time my younger two kids went to kindergarten, they removed it because there was no time for it anymore. And, now that was 10, 15, 18 years ago. Now I'm sure there's even less. I mean, kids are supposed to be reading in kindergarten now. So,
Yeah,
I will say,
that's a whole nother podcast, ma'am.
yeah, it truly is. I will say in Burbank Unified, however, we do have culinary arts classes at all of our secondary schools.
Yeah, us
oh,
too.
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We actually have a very large, in our district, we have a very large emphasis on career and technical education.
Yes.
So all of our high schools and even our middle schools have this career technical education strands. So we have a beautician strand, we have culinary, we have auto mechanics, all that kind of stuff. So CTE is coming back in,
That's great.
which is really wonderful for our students. Quite honestly, I would have made more as a plumber. Let's be really, or an electrician. I really would have made more.
Yeah.
And I love electrical things. So, I mean, I could have, I think they're great careers.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, that's what my youngest son with his 9 neurodiversities or 8 neurodiversities is majoring in college right now is culinary arts.
Awesome.
My nephew, who I believe is dyslexic because the genes on both sides of my husband and my family, he's becoming a mechanic. And, so it's nice that is something that's being brought back because for about 15, 20 years it
A
was
long time.
yeah.
A long time it was gone. So it's really beautiful to see it back.
Yeah. I think that was during the No Child Left Behind era,
Mm.
where things were based on academic test scores.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Are they
you're
not
right.
anymore?
Not because
Not
of
as much.
No Child Left Behind, because that actually had money attached to it. Your school site had to improve, I think, by 11% each year
Uh-huh.
until you were like 100% students were prophient, which
And
is
it's
unrealistic.
mathematically impossible.
Right.
Yeah, it's not. But that's how that law was, and then it phased out. And in different states now do it differently. I think in Texas, because it's where I'm originally from, and my friends who are teachers there, they really stress out about state testing. Where in my district here in California, we're just like, no, it's sometime in April, and we're good.
No,
It's just,
my second youngest, the one I started homeschooling first, was so stressed out in 4th grade in Texas when state testing started because the entire school year was spent focusing on them passing that test because their money was tied to it.
So, and I did do an admin credential program. I didn't finish it, but I did. I finished the program. I just decided I didn't want to be an admin. But one of the things we learned about is there's a very large focus on like looking at different socioeconomic as well as cultural groups and disability status, et cetera, and seeing competency and getting that competency raised. So it's not that there isn't that it's still important in the state, but we don't have that NCLB pressure that what we call it no child left untested, right?
Yeah.
Instead of no child left behind. So
Yep.
It's just different. It's not that it's not important. It's just that they're not going about it in such a negative, punitive way.
Mm-hmm.
And we're also in school districts using other metrics to measure success. So in the past, it was just that score, and your school broke 800, and now you're an 820 school. Now you're an 840 school, and so forth. And now, we have a whole wide range of different metrics that we use to measure successes of school districts and school sites. Graduation rates is now, a huge emphasis, and then other metrics as well.
Yeah.
Is your child struggling with school? Feeling overwhelmed? Introducing 3D Learning Experts, your child's personal tutor. Our expert educators provide personalized, one-on-one support tailored specifically to teach to your child's learning style. We specialize in helping students with dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyscalculia, and similar learning challenges. Our tutors are trained to provide effective strategies for reading, spelling, writing, and math. With our innovative virtual platform, your child can learn from the comfort of their own home. No more commuting or scheduling conflicts. Give your child the boost they need to succeed. Experience the difference with 3D Learning Experts.
I want to get back to, Eric had mentioned math. I would say that the hardest learning disability to work with in regards to AT is dyscalculia. I actually did a single subject research, paper on that. And the issue is that we move so fast in relationship to our students developmentally understand, like understanding that a third is larger than a fourth. And until you really, really concretely get that information, you can't understand fractions. You can't, and doing algebra is all fractions, really, right? It's virtually impossible. And so a lot of the tools that I recommend for my kids with dyscalculia are low-tech tools. I recommend what I call a math toolkit. I don't know if you've heard of that, Jess, but basically it's a binder. And it's got the multiplications table. It's got the conversions, gallon man, the conversions, conversions in there. It's got task analyses on how to complete math problems. So if you're doing long division, you've got the task analysis written down on how to do long division so that when they can't remember, they can go back to it.
And again, that goes back to parents and students and teachers not feeling like the child's cheating.
Right.
By having that.
Right. And it's, like I said, the best thing that I found to support students with math disabilities is cooking. Cooking with the students, doubling, halving,
yes,
taking orders, like working with, really getting in there with the cooking, because all the fractional components, you can also use measuring cups that have the fractions on it. And then, on the other side, you've got metric. Right. So you can really, I would sit there and I'd show, okay, which one's bigger, a half or a quarter? And then I would physically bring the information out. Right. So you really have to be much more concrete with math. Virtual manipulatives are great. Physical manipulatives are great. Anything that they can touch and move around is what's going to support the math disabilities. It is really as an AT specialist, I do find that to be the most challenging.
Which is great when teachers, especially general ed teachers and our special ed teachers, use manipulatives in all their math instruction now. I didn't have that so much when I grew up. It was just the chalkboard is all we had.
But they don't all know how to use algebra tiles.
No, they don't.
should, but they don't. And so those algebra tiles are really, really useful when a teacher uses it correctly. And I have seen teachers be absolutely masterful with that in special ed high school classes, like what we call an SAI core class, right? It's an academic diploma track class, but it's slowed down, right? So that the math is broken up into 2 years instead of just doing it. So the math 1 is broken up to 1A and 1B versus all in 1 year, so they can slow it down. And it's beautiful. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing to see when it's done skillfully.
Well, it's funny that, like Eric, what you were saying, like when we were in school, they just put numbers on the board. And I always say that, like, I could never understand fractions because it just didn't, my brain couldn't comprehend how, like, 2/3 and 3/6 were the same thing, you know? And it wasn't until I started homeschooling and my child had an online, I mean, it was a DVD, or I think it was a VHS that we plugged into the computer, and it showed the fractions. And I was almost 40 years old, and I'm like, I get it now.
Yeah.
So it just, having the manipulatives makes such a difference. And I'm glad that you mentioned, Jacquie, that virtual manipulatives are just as effective, because that's what we use for our virtual math tutoring. And parents are like, how do you do
There are
it?
programs that will reduce the clutter on a page. And that can be really helpful for students with vision impairments, with dyslexia, ADHD, quite honestly, ADD. Reducing that visual clutter is really, really good for our kids. And I actually prefer math books with less visual clutter.
Yeah.
Because we're focusing on the math and versus looking at that beautiful Ferris wheel. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like,
Yeah.
so
Well, and like I said, for my daughter, they blew up her math problem. So she only had like 6 on the page. So there was fewer numbers. It didn't feel as overwhelming and intimidating.
right. You can also take a worksheet, cut it up. This is the thing that I tell, I've actually trained a teacher on recently. I'm like, well, they don't want to do 15. They don't have the attention span for 15. Can you just cut it up and give them 1? Let them finish the 1, give them another, and give
Chunk
them
it out.
another, you know, like just cut it up and chunk it,
Uh-huh.
right? Versus making them feel overwhelmed by the 30 on the page.
And do you find that teachers these days are receptive to those suggestions?
Usually.
Yes.
Usually. I mean, there's always the exception to the rule, especially when I start working with my AP teachers. But because you know they're preparing for the AP exams, and so they need things to be exactly the way they need to be. But usually the teachers are really receptive.
Yeah. And a lot of times it's more of they just don't know how they can be supportive. And that's what they're like, what do I do? I have this student. Can you help? Yes, we can. A lot of times the case manager can do that because they're a special ed teacher and they understand accommodations. But we can also consult and provide some ideas as well. And we do that all the time.
And I think that's something that's really important for our parents to understand is that AT specialists we don't actually give direct service to a student. We come in, we train the student on how to use the program, but we also train the teacher if there's a one-to-one, if there's a speech parents, like we train the team because we're not going to be with the student every day. The teacher is with the student every day. So they're the one that really have to know how to use the program.
Yeah.
Right? So our main job / role is that consultation piece. And I think that's because, you know, I had someone say to me, oh, I want 60 minutes weekly of AT services. And I'm like,
to do what? Right.
I've taught you how to use the program.
Which is very important because I ordered a pen for my daughter.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I love them. The Live Scribes.
She never used it because none of us in the household like to read instructions, and we never figured out how to use it. So it just sat on the shelf for like 10 years.
A low-tech version of a note taker that I really like, I've provided for one of my schools, actually for a few schools, is you can get carbonless copy paper right? So they're notebooks and they're carbon. Remember carbon? And we'd
Yeah.
like,
Uh-huh.
right?
My
And
mother
you
was a teacher. I
yeah,
remember
you get
carbon
glue all over
copies.
yourself, right?
Uh-huh.
So it's carbonless. And then you put a
Like
piece
your
of
checkbook.
yeah, it's like a notebook. You put a
Ah.
piece of paper underneath it. Excuse me. And then the person writes, and then there's 2 copies of it. So you can give the copy to the friend with dyslexia or dysgraphia.
Oh. And what's
Yeah.
that called?
It's just
Oh,
carbonless paper.
carbonless notebook.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, I just got them off of,
Amazon.
well, I wasn't going to say the name, but yeah.
Oh, sorry. I think everybody knows of that company.
Of the behemoth, the online behemoth.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a very low tech way to do it. Another thing that I do, which some teachers don't appreciate, but I think is really simple. Most of our kids have cell phones. At the end of the day, click, click, picture, take a picture of the noteboard with their phone.
And they can get that in the IEP as an accommodation.
Yep.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's
Absolutely.
super simple. It's super simple.
I have
Or
to add that to my list of suggested accommodations because my list was before kids had iPhones.
Yes.
So it's a nice one. The other thing is allowing students to submit their assignments digitally. So
Yes.
if the student is only doing worksheets, then the worksheets can be submitted digitally and sent via email or Google Classroom or Canva or Canvas or whatever it is, the LMS that the teacher is using.
And then they don't have to worry about their executive functioning skills and remembering to turn in that paper.
There's no black hole backpack.
My dog ate my homework.
Yeah, or it's
Well,
crumpled at the bottom of the bag. One of the challenges, though, with doing pictures, while it's great, the executive functioning is going to kick in because the organization of pictures on their phones sometimes is a nightmare.
Yeah,
Because
that's
they'll get
true.
home at the end of the week when they decide to, do their work, and they'll have, 50 pictures on their phone because they're taking pictures of notes in class, taking pictures of the agenda, taking pictures of the homework assignment, and they have all these pictures all over in their phone. And it's just like, and they just close the phone and say, forget it.
So one of the things that we do is we do train the students on the organization of files, how to keep their Google Classroom, because I don't know if people realize this, but once you're enrolled in a class, you're always enrolled in that class. So my 11th graders have classes from elementary school still in there.
Oh, wow.
So we go through and I teach them to delete it. We teach them how to organize their Google Docs and their photos, right? So that they're in specific files. And it helps. It's not always perfect and not every student follows through, but that's the best thing that we can do for the kiddos who have difficulty with note taking.
So that's
And
a
this is why
good,
we also train parents to say, okay, mom and dad, here's what we've done. You need to check in, every other day and make sure things got, in there appropriately. It's a team effort. It's an IEP team. It's a team effort. All of us kind of have to do our part. And we all the times need the parents to kind of, when the kid's at home, say, show me your phone, show me your Google Classroom, show me your files. And a lot of times like, okay, move those pictures over now.
Right.
Well, I was going to say that's a good thing to remember or to ask for the IEP, to ask the AT to do that training with them. That sounds very invaluable.
Well, that's part of consultation collaboration.
Yeah. And it also could be the case manager too.
Okay.
Who just spends a little bit of time with them. Especially if there's a homeroom period, it's a perfect time to do it. I mean, not every school district has homerooms, but if they do, or can pull them out and say, we're going to help you organize it.
Or a resource lab.
Yeah. I'll just briefly just say that AI is coming and it's coming in fast.
Yep.
And it's coming in faster than I think we can keep up with.
Correct.
And school districts are having challenges with creating policy regarding AI. I went to our secondary English teachers meeting about 1.5 years ago. And instead of talking about AI, it became a discussion, we'll say, on different teaching philosophies and what it means to be an English teacher. So we couldn't really get to the discussion about AI until they came to some sort of resolution as to what is their role as an English teacher, because they all come in with different philosophies. And so so that's creating a challenge internally with how to create policy, but also, every day it seems like, okay, there's these 10 new AI websites to go to and so forth. So it's evolving faster, and I doubt we can create policy to keep up with it.
Not only can we not create policy to keep up with it, Eric, but I would say that the students are always 10 steps ahead.
Every
And
time,
so
every time.
every time, right? So I had a teacher say, I'm concerned about the efficacy of the assignment if she takes it home, right? And my response was, use Turnitin. There is AI software so our district has purchased Turnitin, the high schools, and the teachers can then run it through that AI software to see if AI or any plagiarism occurred, right? So we have to be 15 steps ahead of the kids, and we can't be. But what we
Nope.
can do is use the tools that we already have and that are evolving to keep up with the AI. But from a special education perspective and an AT perspective, we're already using AI. What do you think word prediction is, right? Like word prediction is AI, voice to text, like all that stuff. We're already using AI. We just don't realize that we're using it. And
Right.
so I'm all about embracing the tech and not running away from the tech.
Right.
So, but I'm weird. So
No,
I'm
you know,
not normal, clearly, because most of our teachers are really scared. And I would say our education programs are not yet teaching teachers how to deal with AI because they don't know, because we don't know what's there.
Right.
yeah,
We don't know
it's
what's
going to
there,
be a
what's
little bit
coming.
like another battle with cell phones. Cell phones in the classroom, how to use them, how not to use them. Should they be banned? Should they not be banned? Some school districts are banning them. Other school districts are saying we can't ban them. That's illegal. I mean, we're just getting all this, it's a similar discussion with the area of technology. And
And you can ban the cell phones, but what about the watches?
exactly,
Do you see what I'm saying? Like, what about the glasses? One of my colleagues showed me a pair of glasses that they have, and it's all there. There's a
Yep.
recording device in the glasses. It's all right there, right? So they're always 10 steps ahead. We
Yeah.
can't pretend that we're ahead. We can just do our best. And by embracing, like I embrace cell phones, I embrace this technology. And when I was in the classroom, I asked my students to bring their technology in, right? I mean, I know I'm now not in the classroom, but I was in the classroom for quite some time. And I'd say, no, bring your tech in. I want to see what you have. Like, let's talk about it. How can it help you? That is what's going to help our students. Ignoring that the tech is there from a universal design standpoint helps no one.
No.
So that's my point about AI. It's coming. It's here. We don't know what to do with it.
For me, I think the challenge has been having parents work with the team and not feel that the IEP team is the enemy or that the school district is trying to, get something over past them or something like that. No, we're all trying to help the student. I became a special ed teacher 21 years ago because I wanted to help students. I obviously didn't do it for the paycheck, that's for sure. And I became an AT specialist because, like Jackie, I did do an admin program, but it was sort of like the next level up and finding other ways that I could help students after 14 years in the classroom and now being an AT specialist for almost 7 years. We're wanting to work with kids and help students out. And sometimes I think some parents have had bad experiences in other places. And so when they go to a new IEP team in a new district, a new school, they think we're just like them. And I'm not trying to put anyone down, but not all parents have had good experiences. And I'll stipulate that is a fact. But most of us are in it because we really want to help the student and help the kid. And for them to keep in mind and to work with us. We're not the enemy. We're trying to find ways to help your student. And a little bit of patience goes a long way.
That's awesome. That was an amazing suggestion. I appreciate that. Jackie, do you want to add anything or should we just leave it at that?
Yeah, no, I'm just gonna add that we're a team. We can't fix your child, but we can work with you to support your child so that they can become the best student that they can be, right? And sometimes, especially with my families that are from other countries, right? There's this thought that we can fix the kid. We're not here to fix your child. We love your child just the way that they are, right? Like I love my students, I really do. And I love them just the way that they are. And I'm there to help them to be the best student that they can be on an individual basis.
Yep.
So
Our students are not broken.
And I know Eric's that does the same thing. So nope, they are not broken. They are
They're not broken.
100% wonderful, just the way that they are. Kind of
Yep.
like what Mr. Rogers used to say, right? I love you just the way you are, right? And we really truly believe that our kids are very special, unique individuals, and we're here to support them. And they're not broken. They are 100% whole.
Eric and Jacquie, thank you so much for this amazing interview. It went a lot longer than I expected, but you guys gave such great insight and expertise, and your dedication to supporting students just shines through everything you shared tonight, and I truly appreciate it. And I know that my listeners will take away valuable knowledge from this discussion. So thank you.
Happy to be here. Thank you for asking.
Thank you for having me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you so much. You have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. You too.